This morning, we're chatting with Jesse Ball. He is going to take us on a journey of battling addiction to ultra marathon running, a remarkable story of grit and determination. Welcome, Jesse Ball. It's great to have you here this morning.
It's great to be here.
Have you just got back from a 50K run?
Not quite. I had yoga this morning, but I did quite a heavy run yesterday. So it'll be a recovery day today.
Now, let's start from the beginning. Can you tell us what's behind your story of addiction?
Yeah, look, it's a decent chunk of my life. So I guess a good way to summarize it, it was a slow and progressive decline over a period of about 13 years for me. I went from this innocent, happy 13-year-old to towards the end, in my mid-20s, I found myself quite lost with some really self-destructive behaviors and problematic drug use. I think over that period of time, the one constant, as I mentioned, was my life slowly got worse. There were moments where things seemingly would get better, but addiction for me was always this heavy, heavy force pulling me back down. So a good visual sometimes I explain. It's like I was constantly trying to keep my head above water, but I had this weight tied to my feet. So whenever I stopped paddling, I just get pulled back under. And I suppose underneath all that was really just a boy who was quite fearful about the world, trying to find his place in the world, had a lot of anxiety growing up, a lot of overwhelm and fear. They were the underlying emotions behind that journey.
So can you just explain to us what was your addiction?
So I was addicted to drugs. So for me, that's all inclusive. I used every drug besides heroin I never got into. And it was definitely a progressive journey. Like I started off smoking pot, drinking alcohol, did that for a few years. They say weed can be a gateway drug. I heard that, but for some reason it didn't really sink in for me. I thought I'd never become addicted to drugs, which is a good point. I don't think many people, when they're at school, if someone asks them what do they want to be when they grow older, most people don't put their hand up and say, I'm going to be a drug addict. Like I actually, I came from a good family. I came from a good background. I knew right from wrong. I knew that you had to be careful about drugs, but because it happened so slowly, it was really, I guess, sneaky, And then by the time I was 19, I was getting into nightclubs and started experimenting with other drugs such as ecstasy, cocaine, ketamine. By the time I was in my mid-20s, I was addicted to ice, which is a terrible drug, methamphetamine. For me, it was about what gave me the most relief. It wasn't about specific substances.
So you came to a point where you realized that enough was enough. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I did eventually. It wasn't like I woke up one day and I just knew today's going to be the day, There were many times throughout my addiction where I thought I'd had enough, where my life would blow up, whether that be a car accident, a loss of relationship, a death of a friend from drugs, or losing a job, getting arrested. And in these moments, I always thought that I was going to stop using. I'm like, surely this is enough to make me stop. And I couldn't stop. And that's the nature of addiction. It's even though we try to stop, often we can't. So yeah, coming back to that question, like, was there a moment where I realized I had to stop? I think the answer is no. I think it was an accumulation of stress and pressure over a long period of time. And eventually I just hit this breaking point where I just knew I was done. And I was terrified about the idea of not using drugs because for most people, once they become so addicted to substances, the substance actually serve a lot of functions by that stage. Like for me, they help me cope. They help me sort of get through the day. So to let go of that was terrifying. But what happened was I kind of could see my future and where I was going. And that finally scared me more than this idea of not using drugs. So the fear of staying the same finally outweighed the fear of changing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, certainly does. So at what point did you then decide to think, I'm going to get into running?
I love that question because there wasn't really a point where I decided that. It happened really organically. Like I love telling this story because, in my family, there was no one else was a runner at the time. I didn't know any runners. I guess up until that point, I went to rehab when I was about 25 years old. I was always kind of I guess that's normal behavior, but I was a bit of a follower. I just kind of do what I thought people wanted me to do. I wanted to act cool. I wanted to fit in. But then in rehab, I quit smoking 2 weeks into that rehab stay, rehabilitation for drugs and alcohol. I was there for 30 days in total, 35. And 2 weeks in, I kind of started to process a lot of the trauma I had growing up and emotionally releasing, which was a pretty profound experience in itself. And I started running laps of this courtyard, and I just liked the feeling of being in my body. And I guess, after a few days of not smoking, I started to build confidence. And it just naturally progressed from that. When I got out of rehab, I started, doing a run around the block. I might run a few kilometers at a time back then. And I just kept pushing it. Like I ended up running 5 kilometers and then 10 and then 20 and then a marathon. And now like the latest run I did was 160 kilometers, which is 100 miles. So it's been a bit of a journey, over the last 4 years.
Wow. So this is a little bit of a bizarre question, but if I was if you were an addiction medical specialist, say,
Uh-huh.
okay, and you had someone coming in like yourself, would you give them any pointers, or would you encourage them in a direction like what you've gone in terms of the physical exercise?
Yeah, I guess in the line of work I do, like I work at a drug and alcohol clinic and I'm a peer worker, so my job is to support people who are going through treatment. And I'm usually careful not to tell them to do exactly what I've done because everyone's unique and everyone has their own journey. And no one really likes being told what to do, especially like if I was like, oh, you should do what I do, it's great. But I can suggest, things that are really important, which kind of universally important for addiction. So that's finding connection and getting in your body and out of your head. I think those two things are indispensable for me. So getting in my body and out of my head is physical exercise essentially. Anything that's gonna get me thinking less and in my body more. And so yeah, to answer your question, I definitely suggest that people are doing some form of exercise and some form of challenging exercise. For me, I don't think, depending on the person's capabilities, some people might just be able to go for a walk, which is fine. But if you can do more, I always suggest to do more because I find there's a difference between light exercise and rigorous exercise. And it's in that rigorous exercise that I found the benefits.
Mm. So for you personally, how crucial was your running to you being cured from addiction?
It was very crucial. It was huge. I think, like looking back now, I can see how important it was. I'm not sure if I knew at the time. Like now, I can see I was creating new reward pathways in my brain. Like being addicted to drugs for so many years, my brain was completely hijacked of that, that reward system. So to be able to replace that with running, that didn't happen overnight. But like now I'm at the point where I get a real buzz out of going for a run. And I get a buzz out of finishing that run and feeling good about myself. So I think just to, like on one aspect, I suppose, to heal my brain, heal those neural pathways, create some new circuits. But then it's had so many other benefits as well, like finding connection with myself. I spend a lot of time when I'm running in my own thoughts and thinking to myself and just allowing myself to be by myself. Like I could never do that when I was using drugs. I couldn't sit still. I always had to be, the life of the party. I always had to be moving. So to be able to go for a run and just be with myself for an extended period of time has been really beneficial.
Would you also say that like there's a community within the people who do a lot of running? I mean, there's some people who are in our audience today who are very keen runners. And I hear about a lot of connection that goes on with those guys as they get out and do a run together. Has that surely been part of it too?
Yeah, I love it. It's the best. Especially coming from where I've come from, like for a long time I couldn't look at people in the eye. I felt like a disgrace walking into a supermarket drug affected. I just felt ashamed, and so I guess stigma plays a part in that as well, being a drug addict. And so to be able to just go for a run and even just look at strangers and them smile at me and give me a head nod, and to be able to join the local running group and connect with people, and I just love being around that health and fitness lifestyle now. Like everyone feels good, There's endorphins flying around. It's a really good vibe. And I really got into the trail running purely because, well, as a direct result of someone being really kind to me at a trail race. And the community in trail running specifically is out of this world. Everyone there is just so lovely and supportive. Everyone's kind of running their own race, but like if someone falls over, someone will come and pick you up and,
Mm.
carry you along or check in on you. So I've learned a lot about friendship and the power of community and connection through running.
Mm. Gee, I tell you what, if I was on one of those long runs, I think I would be needing your help to carry me along, Jesse. Tell me, is that right? Was that 150 Ks, did you say? Have I got that right?
Yeah, almost. About 161 kilometers to be exact was the last run I did, which is 100 miles.
So when you got to the 150K mark, how did you feel?
I felt pretty good because I had a lot of people supporting me. That wasn't an actual event I did. It was a run around an athletics track. So I ran for 24 hours around Walinda Park, which is an athletics track in Greensboro, to raise awareness and money for a mental health organisation. And the awesome thing was I had so many people come and join me. Like I was never alone throughout this whole run. I think a few hundred people came down. We raised almost $11,000 together. It was just an awesome result. And yeah, again, the best part was at the 150K mark, I had about 70 people running with me. And I think by that stage, I knew I was going to get to the end. It's often in those, like I've done a few other big runs, like 100 kilometers, 56, and it's often about halfway through is when it gets a bit tough because you've still got so long to go. And it's really just a matter of staying relaxed and staying focused on breaking the race down. If you look too far ahead, you'll overwhelm yourself.
Mm. So just before we finish up, I'd love to hear about how you are supporting people now who have had a similar journey with a view for when, particularly when you were going through those challenging times of addiction.
Yeah, sure. So I've got a bit of a life philosophy that I like to live by now, and that the first one is looking after myself because I can't support others if I'm not running well. So that is keeping my mind, body, and soul active, which I do through yoga, gym, running, staying connected to my recovery. And then the second philosophy is helping others. I do that at work as a peer worker. I'm studying counseling at the moment to hopefully keep helping people in that industry. Work at a detox 1 day a week, and I'm about to start a second job working with youth and at a youth residential detox. I suppose in my personal life as well, I'm in recovery programs where I work with people, and that's a mutually beneficial thing. We all sort of help each other, so that's great to be a part of. And then keep challenging myself to actively grow and learn. And for me, that's a real active process. I feel like if I'm not pushing myself forward, I can easily fall back. So what that looks like today is, yeah, running's a part of that, but doing things that are uncomfortable. So whether that's, having an ice bath, waking up early and going to the gym, whether that's having that hard conversation with a friend, whether that's solo traveling, going to a silent retreat for 10 days. In my recovery, it's been important to consistently challenge myself so I keep growing. And with that, I suppose with that knowledge and that life experience, I can relate to more people and therefore help more people. So a rewarding path to be on, much more rewarding than, mindlessly using drugs to survive. That was terrible. So
So when you are supporting somebody, how does it make you feel?
most of the time makes me feel really good. Yeah. And it's a different kind of good. It's not like that instant gratification I used to get from using drugs. It's not like a flick of a switch. It's usually after the fact, or maybe I'll reflect back on it and go, oh, you know what? Like the last few weeks or few years now hasn't all been about me anymore. Like it's been about other people as well. And I like to operate from this idea of like we all are the same person. So like if I'm helping, say if I was helping yourself or you're helping me, it's like really we are the same person. Maybe in another life I was you. I know that can be quite a strange belief for some people, but I really like that because it helps remind me that yeah, we all are connected and when we help others, we're helping ourselves. And I think when I look back, whenever I do die one day, I'd like to look back and smile at all the people I've connected with and people that have helped me and I've helped along the journey. It's not going to be how much money I had or how fast I could run or, it's going to be the connections. So that's what's important to me today.
Mm. Well, Jesse, it's a great story, and we have so much admiration for where you've been and what you've achieved and where you are now, and for what you're putting back into community as well, and supporting others that have had similar circumstances to you. So thank you so much for being our guest here at Monday Matters today.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you.